Good Friday, everyone. Thank you for joining in for this Harley Carnes podcast. On the headlines, please hit the buttons or depress them or cause the heat of your finger to activate them. The ones that say like or follow or subscribe or all three, it'll sure help a lot. And we sure do appreciate you and your support. Looks as though the government is not going to be shut down this time. President Trump and Democrats in the Senate worked out a deal by leaving out a whole bunch of stuff. And it's a good thing they did that, right? There are still a couple of snags, of course. Democrats don't like the idea that other senators, Republicans in this case, might be able to sue former special counsel Jack Smith for seizing their phone records during his fishing expedition. Fact is, the deal only buys 2 weeks of time for the Department of Homeland Security, and it continues funding for the rest of the government, for a while anyway. Democrats don't like ICE's immigration crackdown, and they're doing whatever they can to stop it or blunt it or slow it down. And interrupting DHS funding could do that. So here's what is at play. And you can see Chuck Schumer's puppet strings tug and pull as he does his progressive secretariat's billing. Activists flood the streets of Minneapolis, get in the faces of ICE agents, threaten them, throw things at them, and try to stop them from doing their job of arresting international lawbreakers and trespassers. That's what U.S. law expects ICE agents to do. It, by the way, is illegal, breaking other laws to impede and threaten members of law enforcement in the progress of their duties. Those crowds and the disorder they cause and the threat they represent to officers is the reason there are so many ICE agents on the job. If they weren't there, the agents wouldn't be there. They wouldn't need that many. If the protests were suddenly to become peaceful and legal, ICE agents could withdraw all but the handful necessary to make the arrests that they're supposed to make. Democrats are saying that ICE has no right to be there in such numbers. That is patently not true. Democrats are saying ICE is taking the law-abiding citizen off the streets. That's also patently untrue, though it's possible to scoop up one or two here and there. They get released, This happens. They're arresting alleged criminals, people who have broken the law, sometimes some of our most serious laws. It's part of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement job description. Democrats like to call American law enforcers Gestapo. That is inaccurate, and it's highly insulting. But if they say it often enough, the gullible buy into it, mostly out of ignorance. The bulk of the blame for this insanity can be placed on the shoulders of Minnesota's governor, Tim Walz, and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, who are preventing the Minneapolis Police Department from keeping the peace on the streets. That's their job. From corralling the protesters into areas that protect them and their fellow law enforcers in federal uniforms so they can do their jobs. Minneapolis police know how to do that. They're just not being allowed to do their basic job of controlling those streets. We saw the same thing in Seattle and Portland and some other Western sanctuary cities that paid a heavy price for it at the hands of those who only want to disrupt this country and set fire to its fabric. President Trump says it's a clear violation of the law for Frey to refuse to help enforce federal immigration laws. Mayor Frey says they will refuse to enforce federal immigration laws. President Trump says that's a clear violation of the law. In fact, Frey is lying. No one is asking Minneapolis police to enforce federal laws on immigration. What Minneapolis police are expected to do and legally required to try to do is police the streets, and that means protecting both the people and the federal police from each other. Keep them separate, that's all. If Frey won't do that, then he is complicit in the chaos and mayhem of his own city, and there are legal issues that go with failing to do your job like that. Resistance to federal enforcement of laws you don't like is one thing, and it can be legal to resist, but there are limits to resistance. Actually impeding law enforcement is a whole nother thing. Example, if a jailer helps a criminal evade arrest or refuses to turn over a criminal for a legal warrant, that's aiding and abetting, and that's a crime. It is arguable that sanctuary cities and states, to the extent that they are aiding and abetting criminals by helping them evade arrest or by standing between ICE agents and their quarry, are breaking the law as an enterprise, and that could lead to RICO arguments. It's a sick, very ugly kettle of fish for sure, and it's entirely political. Because progressive socialists who are pulling the strings on this think they are protecting future voters who will help, as Obama infamously put it, fundamentally transform America. President Trump is planning to tariff the hell out of Cuba. The first step is the new National Emergency Declaration over the many practices, policies, and anti-American actions by Cuba, declaring them a threat to U.S. national security and foreign policy. What all that means is tariffs to come against anyone who sells oil to Cuba. And he's leaving the decision about which nations or corporations or activists may be hit by tariffs in the hands of the U.S. Trade Representative and the Departments of Commerce, Treasury, State, and Homeland Security. SETI is going to end this year. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence has been going on for 27 years. That program has huge space and earthbound telescopes tasked to search for signals in the heavens. And roughly millions of home computers have been part of the network that analyzes those radio signals. There were countless, about 12 billion naturally occurring radio signals. Only about 100, after all this time, are considered to be decent candidates for having ET on the other end. Could be ET phoning, or maybe it's just ET TV that we can't watch. In any case, after 27 years of failing to make contact with any alien civilization, the SETI program is going to be wrapping up. For the next several months, intense focus will be brought to those 100 finalists in hope of finding ET intelligence. This is unfortunate. Last year's champion 2-year-old and this year's Kentucky Derby favorite, Ted Naffy, won't be running for the Roses this weekend. He has a bone bruise. Besides, it's not going to be much of a derby this year because it's so cold, and several contending horses have been pulled by their owners and trainers due to the cold. Races all over the country have been or are being rescheduled. Hasn't been this cold in years. I mean, there is frost in the citrus groves of Florida, and there could be a dusting of snow along the mid-Gulf coast of the Sunshine State this weekend. It won't last, but it doesn't happen often, that's for sure. The only part of the state, Florida, that won't see freezing is all the way down by Boca and Miami and, of course, the Keys. Floridians don't mind all that much unless they make their living growing oranges and such. They know it'll be back in the 70s and 80s soon, and we'll be talking about how cold it was there for a few days. Best not complain. Not with folks in the North and Midwest dealing with prolonged cold, a foot and more of snow, power out, misery to make your eyes water. So don't feel sorry for the folks in Florida, because they don't. Remember the guy who rushed up and squirted Congresswoman Ilhan Omar with his apple cider vinegar syringe? That was in Minneapolis. The U.S. Attorney's Office has charged Anthony Kazmirchak with assault in the 3rd degree. Did you know that Gulfstream Aircraft, which builds some of the world's greatest, most sophisticated, comfortable, fast, and efficient business jets, has not been certified for sale in Canada? That's political, because Gulfstreams are world famous and among the very top of the pyramid. President Trump has responded to that, says he's decertifying all aircraft built in Canada, which means, most importantly, Bombardier, also among the best among business jets. Recertifying would come as soon as Gulfstream is certified by Canada. And if it turns out, and it might, that the president by himself cannot reverse a previous FAA certification. Then he says he'll smack Canada with a 50% tariff on all aircraft sold in America, which would make Bombardier non-competitive against the other big guys like Gulfstream and Falcon, Lear, Cessna, Embraer. Lastly, two quick animal stories, or I should say a couple of animal stories, or maybe I could say lastly, 2 quick animal stories. Duh. Mama never promised me brains, you know. In Texas, Liberty County, police captured a kangaroo as it went hopping down a chilly county road. People who lived nearby rushed out, helped the deputies to catch him. And in Holly Township in Michigan, a runaway donkey has been caught, actually very easily. This is one of those little bitty donkeys about as tall as your 4-year-old child. She is named Dolly Parton. There's nothing about the donkey that would easily explain why. Like most folks, the owners just love Dolly, I guess. I want to thank you for joining us today for the podcast, Harley on the Headlines. I do appreciate you. Please help spread the good word. Hit those buttons and email someone. Give them a gift of a free link to an episode or 2. Do me a bigger favor if you would. Be happy today. Make some good decisions in life. Fly safe. It's the only way to get there. I'm Harley Carnes. We'll see you next time.